seen a speedboat, zoom right in front of a giant container ship and thought, wow, that looks exciting. Well, maybe think again. Welcome to this deep dive. We're looking at something really critical today. Why getting too close to massive ships in a small boat? Well, it's basically flirting with disaster.
It really is. And we've got a perfect example, actually, from video analysis that you, our listener, shared with us. It looks closely at a near miss involving the container ship NUUK MAERSK. Huge ship.
Right. Where was this again?
This was in the Long River, just near Ho Chi Minh City. The ship had just left Cat Lai port, heading out to the East Sea. And in this scenario, it just perfectly highlights the kind of hidden dangers we need to talk about.
Exactly. So our mission here is pretty straightforward, but honestly vital. We want to pin down why that quick dash across a big ship's path is so risky.
And what you absolutely need to know to stay safe out there.
Okay, let's get into it. Maybe start with just the sheer scale of these things. They're like moving mountains, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. The difference in size and mass is, well, it's hard to even comprehend sometimes. Take the NUUK MAERSK from that video you sent. It's 172 meters long.
That's nearly 2 football fields.
Exactly. And it weighs over 27,000 tons. It's less like a boat and more like a floating office block moving through the water.
Right. And something that big, it just doesn't handle like a speedboat, does it?
Not even close. This is crucial. They are incredibly slow to maneuver, and maybe even more importantly, they take an enormous distance to stop.
How long are we talking?
Get this. Even if it's moving at what sounds like a slow speed, say 10 knots, that's about 11.5 miles per hour.
Okay.
A ship like the NUUK MAERSK can need up to 2 kilometers to actually come to a complete stop.
2 kilometers, that's
Yeah.
over a mile.
Over a mile, let that sink in. So imagine you're in a small boat nearby, maybe your engine stalls, maybe you hit a wave wrong and have to turn sharply, or someone just loses balance. The point is, by the time that small boat is in trouble, the big ship, it simply cannot stop in time. It physically can't.
The inertia is just immense. It's not like slamming on car brakes at all.
Not even remotely. The video you shared really highlights this, showing how a small boat just managed to avoid disaster by gunning the engine.
Yeah, I remember that bit. Pure luck, really.
Exactly. And luck, well, it's not a reliable safety plan on the water.
Okay, so stopping distance is a huge factor. What about other, maybe less obvious dangers around these massive hulls? You mentioned physics.
Right. Beyond just the sheer bulk, you've got powerful hydrodynamic forces at play, things happening unseen in the water.
The hidden stuff, like currents and pressure. Tell us about the weights and suction.
Well, think about how much water a 27,000-ton ship displaces as it moves. It creates these significant disturbances, pressure differences, currents.
Okay.
This can create a kind of suction effect. A smaller boat that gets too close, especially alongside or near the stern, can literally get pulled towards the larger ship into its path.
Pulled in. Wow, that's unsettling.
It is. The key thing is stay well clear. These invisible forces can be incredibly dangerous.
And I guess the waves they throw off aren't exactly small ripples either.
Definitely not. The wake from a container ship can be surprisingly large, quite powerful, easily enough to capsize a smaller, less stable boat that gets caught broadside.
Right. And the video analysis mentioned this. This is even worse in narrow channels, like that river.
Precisely. In confined waters, there's just less room for that displaced water to go, so the effects, the waves, the suction can be amplified. Plus, there's less space for anyone to maneuver out of trouble.
So we've got this enormous vessel, takes forever to stop, generates these powerful forces, and then there's the issue of actually seeing each other. Yeah.
Yes, visibility. This is absolutely critical. From the bridge of a large container ship, the view isn't like looking out a car windshield.
No.
Because of the height of the bridge and the sheer length and structure of the ship, especially with containers stacked high, there are significant blind spots.
Where are the worst ones?
Particularly right in front of the bow, for quite a distance actually.
So, thinking back to that speedboat in the video, the captain on the NUUK MAERSK might not have even seen it.
It's entirely possible. They could have been completely invisible in that forward blind spot.
Okay, that adds a whole new layer of risk.
It does. And if the speedboat operator misjudges things, maybe how fast they're going or how quickly the distance to the ship is closing.
Which is easy to do, right? Big things look like they're moving slower.
Exactly. So they might place themselves right in that blind spot without even realizing it, until it's far, far too late. It's a recipe for disaster, really. A misperception with potentially fatal outcomes.
And like you said, this isn't just theory. The video analysis you shared, it mentioned real-world incidents.
Yes, it's important to stress these risks are very real. The source material mentioned a specific case from 2023, I believe, in Southeast Asia.
What happened there?
A speedboat collided with a cargo ship. Injuries resulted because the smaller boat apparently misjudged the speed of the larger vessel and the effect of its wake. And sadly, that's not a one-off. Smaller boats being swamped, capsized, or worse, by encounters with large ships, it happens more often than people might think.
Okay. This paints a very clear and, frankly, quite sobering picture of the dangers. So let's pivot to the practical advice. What are the absolute must-know safety guidelines for anyone in a smaller boat near these giants?
Right. The number one rule, the most fundamental piece of advice, is maintain a safe distance. Always.
How far is safe?
The analysis you sent recommends staying at least 500 meters ahead of a large ship.
500 meters, that's quite a gap.
It is, but it creates that vital buffer zone. It gives the large ship crew more time, precious time, to see you and react, even if you have an engine problem or something unexpected happens.
Makes sense. What else?
Understanding the rules of the waterway is essential. You have to know who has right of way.
And in narrow channels, that's usually the big ship.
Often, yes. Because their ability to maneuver is so severely limited. You can't just expect them to dodge you. Think of it like a huge semi-truck on a narrow street. It needs space and predictability. Don't assume you can just dart across.
Good analogy. Are there tools that can help? Communication, maybe?
Definitely. Using a VHF radio is a really good practice. You can actually call the ship, announce your position, state your intentions.
So you actively make them aware you're there. Addresses the visibility issue.
Exactly. It's being proactive about safety.
And if there was just one single piece of advice to take away from all this?
It would have to be. Never, ever assume you have been seen.
Even if it looks like they're looking right at you.
Even then, operate with extreme caution. Be predictable. Maintain your course and speed. Avoid sudden moves when you're anywhere near a large vessel because, as that analysis concluded, that quick thrill, that risky cut across, it's just not worth risking lives for.
Okay, let's quickly recap the key takeaways from this deep dive then. We've really grasped the immense scale, the shocking stopping distances of ships like the NUUK MAERSK.
Yep. And those hidden dangers, the powerful waves, the suction forces that can pull you in.
Plus the critical issue of visibility, those big blind spots from the bridge.
And crucially, the safety rules. Keep that 500-meter distance ahead, understand right of way, use your radio if you can.
And always, always assume you are invisible.
That's the bottom line.
So, thinking back to that first image, this speedboat zooming across the bow, it might look thrilling initially. But now, understanding all these factors, you see it differently, don't you? You see the layers of unseen risk that make it just breathtakingly reckless.
Absolutely. Which maybe leads us to a final thought for you, our listener, to consider.
Go on.
Given these fundamental physics, the sheer limitations of these massive vessels, what other interactions on the water, things that might seem common or routine, could actually be harboring unexpected dangers we should all be more aware of?
That's a great question to ponder. The maritime world is complex, isn't it?
It certainly is. And understanding these dynamics, it's just key. Key for everyone's safety out there.
Okay, imagine this. You've got this huge metal giant just cutting through the water, a massive container ship.
Yeah.
And then right there, practically in its path, is this little wooden boat just bobbing up and down.
Seems almost unbelievable, like a mismatch.
Totally. But it's actually, well, pretty common on rivers all over the world. So welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into that whole dynamic. You know, these giant ships sharing the same space with much, much smaller vessels.
And we've got a great example to work with, actually. A video one of you sent in showing exactly this kind of encounter.
Perfect.
So our mission today really is to understand the forces involved here. What are the dangers? And, you know, what are the practical things small boat operators need to think about?
Right. And the star of this particular show is a container ship called POS LAEMCHABANG.
POS LAEMCHABANG.
Okay.
Yeah, try saying that quickly. Its IMO number is 9974761, and it flies under the Liberian flag.
Liberia, okay. Now, when we talk about massive,
Yeah.
let's get some scale. This ship, the POS LAEMCHABANG, it's 172 meters long, end to end. That's the LOA, length overall.
Wow, 172 meters.
Yeah.
That's big. Like longer than 1.5 football fields, maybe closer to 2 American ones.
Yeah, easily. And it's 27 meters wide, too. So while maybe on the open ocean it's considered mid-sized, on a river, it's absolutely enormous. It just dominates everything.
And the name is interesting, POS LAEMCHABANG. It almost certainly links back to the port of LAEMCHABANG over in Thailand, which is, a huge shipping hub in Southeast Asia. So that tells you right away, this ship is part of that whole global trade network, moving goods.
Absolutely. It's a link in the chain. And looking at the video, a couple of things really stand out visually. The bow, the front part, is this really bright red.
Distinctive.
Yeah, and a big black anchor. Looks very solid. And we noticed some markings, like 5.8 painted on the side.
5.8. Could be its draft, maybe, how deep it sits in the water.
Could be. That'd be 5.8 meters, I guess. Important for river navigation, obviously. Or, maybe some other technical thing.
Right. And where was this video taken?
This was on the Long River in the Cam Ga area of Vietnam.
Yeah.
The ship was heading towards Cat Lai Port, which is near Ho Chi Minh City, a very busy port.
Okay, so putting it all together, you have these container ships, absolute workhorses for the global economy, carrying just incredible amounts of stuff we use every day.
Right.
But when they move into these, narrower rivers, that huge size difference compared to the local boats, it just creates challenges.
Yeah.
And potential dangers.
Like you said, David and Goliath.
Right.
Or maybe an elephant in a room full of, much smaller animals. The power difference is just immense.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so let's unpack that a bit more. Because these ships, vital as they are, their size creates real hazards in confined waters. Which brings us to the waves.
Ah, the waves.
You see it in the video. As the POS LAEMCHABANG moves, the water is really churning. The bow wave, specifically. It pushes so much water aside.
You see the foam, the ripples spreading out. It's a very clear picture of the energy involved.
It really is. And we need to understand, a ship that's 172 meters long, weighing tens of thousands of tons, it builds up a huge amount of kinetic energy.
Right. The energy of motion, the heavier and faster it is, the more energy it has.
And where does that energy go?
A lot of it goes into creating those waves, especially the bow wave. And these aren't just gentle little swells. They pack a serious punch. Think wakeboarding, but on a massive scale.
Exactly. And the source material of the video really emphasizes this. These waves can be surprisingly high and powerful, enough to really toss around smaller boats, especially those traditional wooden ones, the gay, common in that area.
Ah, yes, the gay. Often quite small, shallow draft wooden boats, right? Used for fishing, local transport.
Precisely. Now, imagine being on one of those, maybe just a few meters long yourself, and suddenly this wall of water is rushing at you from a giant ship.
It immediately brings up the question of stability, doesn't it?
For sure.
A small boat, particularly if it's relatively flat-bottomed, which many traditional designs are, it's just much more susceptible to being rolled or even swamped by a big sudden wave.
Unlike a larger ship with a lower center of gravity.
Exactly. Bigger ships are inherently more stable. Small boats just don't have that advantage. And the source, the description with the video, it mentions the boat operator's concern as the wave came closer. You can understand why. It highlights their vulnerability.
It really does. But thankfully, the source also gives some really practical advice. Survival tips, basically, for anyone caught in that situation.
Okay. Like what?
First, and this seems crucial, try to point your boat directly at the wave. Approach it head on or perpendicularly.
Right, that makes sense. If you take it broadside on the side of the boat.
You're presenting a much bigger target for the wave's energy. Much easier to get rolled over.
Yeah, meeting it head on means the hull cuts through it rather than getting pushed sideways or lifted up dangerously. Smallest profile to the wave.
Okay, second tip. Slow down and hold on tight.
Reduce speed, right. Not the time to try and outrun it or power through it aggressively.
No, you could lose control easily. Slowing down gives you a bit more time, more stability.
And holding on, absolutely essential. These waves can jolt the small boat hard. People can get thrown out. So grabbing onto something solid is key for staying in the boat and keeping control.
And finally, the advice is, if you can, try to get into shallower water or just get further away from the big ship's path altogether.
Ah, shallower water. Because waves tend to lose some energy, some power, as the water depth decreases.
Exactly. It can offer a bit of a buffer. And obviously, just not being right in the wake is the safest bet if you have the option.
You know, what's really striking watching that video, and the source mentions this too, is how skilled the small boat operator seems.
Yeah, they look calm, focused.
Handling the boat, keeping it stable despite the waves. It really speaks to the kind of experience and, frankly, intuition that river navigators develop. This probably isn't their first time dealing with a ship's wake.
Good point. They learn to anticipate, to react.
But, as the source also points out, not everyone has that skill level. And these big waves absolutely can and do cause serious accidents sometimes.
Okay, so let's quickly recap what we've covered in this deep dive. We've got this mid-sized container ship, POS, LAEMCHABANG, huge on a river, creating these surprisingly powerful waves.
Heck.
We've seen the real danger these waves pose to smaller boats, like the traditional gay in the video. They're quite vulnerable.
Definitely.
And we've gone through those key survival tips. Meet waves head on, slow down, hold tight, and try to find shallower water or just get out of the way.
And we acknowledge the skill involved in handling these situations, like the operator we saw.
Right. So understanding all this is just, well, vital if you live or work on rivers where these big ships operate.
It really is. And that leads to a bigger question, maybe something for you, the listener, to think about. Well, we know container ships are generally getting bigger over time, right?
Seems that way.
So what are the long-term consequences of that trend for, say, river ecosystems? Or for the communities that depend on those rivers? Are there, new solutions or maybe regulations needed to strike a better balance between global trade and local navigation safety and river health?
That's a heavy one. Balancing commerce and local life on the water as the ships get even bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's complex, definitely something to mull over.